Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Don't forget to check out my Substack. I usually publish an article a week over there. It's linked down below, as is my Patreon, where you can get some books as part of the membership and support me as I work on some new creative things that are a little bit outside of the book writing wheelhouse. But I want to talk today about whether or not cinemas are dying. This is a topic that I've covered on the channel before, either tangentially or in some cases more directly, but usually on live streams. And I want to just make a video that's really responding to the current state of things here at the end of 2025. I want to read a quote from the Netflix co-CEO, Ted Sarandos, who said that the current box office is a sign that people want to, quote, watch movies at home. What is the consumer trying to tell us? That they'd like to watch movies at home. Thank you. The studios and the theaters are duking it out over trying to preserve this 45-day window that is completely out of step with the consumer experience of just loving a movie. Now, I happen to think cinemas are dying, but not for that reason, not because people prefer to watch movies at home. There's a lot of advantages to watching movies at home that I think it's really easy to think of, right? You can pause the movie, you can use the bathroom, you can have a beer, you can not pay for overpriced snacks. You can watch it in several different sittings. In a lot of cases, what you see at home, if you have the money, I guess, to buy a good theater setup, is going to be technically equal, if not better, than what you would get at a theater in terms of fidelity or maybe even sound quality. I still think theaters generally are going to be better in terms of the sound quality than most home theater systems are capable of delivering, unless you're really going to drop a lot of money. But a really big OLED screen, if you're sitting reasonably close to it, is going to technically take up the same amount of the field of vision that a movie theater would, meaning it's going to appear very large to you and it's going to be very high fidelity. Plus, you're going to have deeper blacks than what you would have actually in a movie theater. So it could technically be justified as like a maybe even a superior technological experience if you are watching a properly mastered movie. But theaters feel different, right? They feel bigger. They feel louder. There's a lot of things that a theater can deliver you that's different from a home experience, but the gap, let's say, between the theater experience and the home experience has closed steadily over the last 30 years to the point where I think a lot of people, depending on the content they're wanting to watch, will view them as parody. So that's kind of what the Netflix co-CEO there, Sarandos, is trying to get across, is that the home experience, that's what people are preferring. But my belief is that the box office is dying because movies are not good. That's why people are not going to the movies. If you're thinking about going to the movies, you probably are expecting to get some kind of return on the money that you're going to spend. They're not free. And watching it on Netflix is essentially saying that the movie is worthless to you. That's the lowest amount of commitment that you can have. It's more effort to pirate a movie than it is to watch it on Netflix. So it is the same as watching it on a Saturday afternoon broadcast in the 1990s on the local cable station or something. That means the movie's worthless. It's worth so little you won't even rent it. It's worth so little that you will only watch it on a Saturday afternoon where you're not really paying attention to it. It's worthless. It's a worthless experience. It's only slightly worth more than the time, like the alternate utility of your time. And that's actually why I don't watch a lot of movies anymore and I don't watch TV shows, is the alternate utility of my time is pretty consistently higher than what I would get out of the entertainment value for a movie, or especially a TV show, especially a 1-hour TV show with a lot of seasons or something like that. So the entertainment value that I get out of that, it's just I have better alternate utility for my time spending it somewhere else, practicing or working or playing a video game, something that's going to be more entertaining than that. So I don't think people are staying home from the movie theater simply because they can get a similar experience at home or, on an iPad, right? If you're watching a romantic comedy, is it worse on the iPad than it is in a theater? Yeah, but not really, because it's more about the jokes and the writing, right? So there's a whole field of content that isn't really improved by being at the cinema. So I kind of thought for a long time, and I'd always been willing to invest money to have a really good cinema experience at home. So way back in the 2000s, I bought a projector. Yeah, I could even get it out of the closet. I think I still have it. To project a huge screen on my wall, and I built a screen for it, and I project movies on it, and it was like, man, it was just awesome. It was this great cinema experience, and it had a little 5.1 system that I worked, and it just worked really good for my living room. And it made me excited that I could have something of a cinema experience to watch things like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings at home. Now I can watch them on, a large flat panel TV, and it's still a pretty good experience. Not quite as good as the theater. You could watch with a VR headset. You could put a VR headset on and have like a virtual theater, and that'll provide a lot of the visual experience that you might get for seeing a large screen. So there's a lot of experiences that I think are kind of close to the movie theater experience. But what I think has happened is that consumers have just gotten used to movies not being worth their time, so they're not going to go to the movie theater. If you go to the movie theater and you're disappointed 10 times in a row, you're just going to stop going. It makes a lot of sense to me. If I remember back, say the year 2000, we'll go back in time 25 years to when I was a lad of 16 or 17. I could go to the movies every Friday night, and I usually did. There was always something on that I was willing to watch, and I always felt like it was worth my $7. There's only a couple of movies that I could think of that were like bad enough that I felt like I got ripped off for my ticket. And when I compare these movies, even the ones that I thought were mediocre or bad, delivered a better cinema experience than most movies that I've seen over the last couple of years in the cinema. That is, they're a good experience to go to. I'm there with friends. It's kind of fun. But mainly they're just better movies. I think they hold up better. Even, something like Gone in 60 Seconds, which I considered a pretty mediocre movie at the time. I think it holds up better than a lot of modern movies do, at least as far as like mid-budget movies. And we've had the loss of the mid-budget movie is a thing that happened, because as our economic signals start to cross, you end up losing these mid-budget movies, these low-budget movies, even the movies that people would go and see at the theater just because they wanted to do something on a Saturday afternoon. They wanted to go and have the movie theater experience, and they were pretty rarely disappointed with that experience. So now it became all about blockbusters. And I remember George Lucas, it might have been George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, predicted that that's what would happen, is movies would become this ultra premium, super high budget experience, and you'd lose a lot of those low and mid budget movies that would go into cinemas. And instead that stuff would just disappear. And what we have had is that it's not disappeared, but it's gone onto things like Netflix. The problem being that that's just a value add for the Netflix subscription, and for the consumer, that basically means it's worthless. They don't really think of a random movie that they're going to watch on Netflix as being this, I'm paying for this with my subscription. They're like, it's on Netflix, I'll just watch it. So the value that consumers have towards the movies has gone down, and I really believe that's because we've had a decrease in the quality of movies. And if you're wondering what's the biggest area that the quality of movies have gone down, and it's not the special effects, it is the writing. I made a video almost 10 years ago, why do modern movies suck? And the reason was because of the writing. The writing is just way worse than it was 25 years ago. I can't tell you exactly why that is, but the next generation of writers that succeeded the baby boomers are just not good. They're not good at their craft, and they're continually writing kind of save the cat, ultra predictable slop that is really for the lowest common denominator. And I think as budgets have gotten bigger and the need to capture the biggest audience possible, you're gonna go harder and harder for the general audience and less for any kind of connoisseur or cinephile kind of audience. So there's not going to be very many movies that are made that are for any kind of a niche audience that go into theaters. It's all going to be stuff that maybe just goes straight to Netflix, which means it's got to be maybe even lower budget than what you would have. No, the mid-budget movie has kind of melted away over the years. So that's the reason that I think that cinemas are in fact dying, is that I think movies have gotten worse. And the reason I changed my mind on this is I went and saw Revenge of the Sith with my son. And we can watch Revenge of the Sith anytime at home. I have the Blu-rays. We could stream it. We can watch Revenge of the Sith whenever we wanted. We watched the other Star Wars movies, but my son was like, no, we'll watch Revenge of the Sith for the first time in the theaters. And it blew him away. And honestly, it blew me away because I hadn't seen it in that format in 20 years, with the full volume sound, with the full contrast that's in the sound design that George Lucas always had in the Star Wars movies, where things really hit hard, where they're is great music that everything's audible, everything's visible, and the screen is big, and you can see so many details that are there. And the film effect, even though the film, I believe it's actually a digital projection, but because it's kind of not as crisp as you might get at home, like the CG blended in better, right? It looked better on the cinema screen than it did at home because of some of those effects. Maybe it was the film, but I think that was a digitally shot movie. You can tell me down in the comments exactly what was going on, but it looked better than it actually did at home because of whatever was going on with the way that they do a projection format for that. So it was a better experience. And what I realized was I enjoyed that experience, not just because it was a bigger screen, louder, but because it was a good movie. And because it was a good movie, I didn't care about all the benefits that you get about a home experience. I didn't care about pausing the movie. The movie completely entertained me the whole time. So I had no reason to feel like I needed to pause the movie and use the bathroom or do anything like that. I didn't feel the need to fill my gullet with snacks in order to enjoy the movie. I think I got some popcorn for my son. I don't even like popcorn. So I just watched the movie. It was really good. And what I've seen develop over the last 25 years, like since Revenge of the Sith, basically that was a great movie. And I realized, yeah, this is a great experience. Why don't people go to the theaters to have this experience? And the answer is because they're not getting that experience. They're not getting a really good movie that entertains them for 2 hours. They're getting slop. They're getting stuff that they don't really like as much. That's maybe overly predictable, or it's preachy, or it's got overt political messaging and just bad writing. If the writing is not there, then the movie is not going to be good, no matter how good the special effects actually are. The writing has to at least be at an acceptable level, and very often it is not, as we've seen over the past 10, maybe even more years. I think cinema really started to fall off after the 2000s, but it really started to fall off hard maybe 10 or 12 years ago. So what theaters have done in order to adjust to this, like, kind of lowering of interest by people in going to the theaters, is they try to get more money from fewer people. This is a normal economic reaction. As a market shrinks, you try to more heavily monetize the consumers that are left. So ticket prices are more expensive, but they're offering more stuff. Instead of just a regular audiovisual experience of like good sound, good visuals, it's got to be like the DFX, like the rumbling seats. We're adding extra sensory feelings into what we're seeing there. We're trying to stimulate more of our senses. I found out recently, my mom was talking about movie theaters that serve you a whole meal. So you can have like a whole meal while you're watching a movie, and ones that serve wine and beer, right? Things that you would normally only drink at home and that were never part of the theater experience as long as I can remember it. These things are like adding extra aesthetic experiences into what should be a sufficient audiovisual experience. Watching a good, well-made film should be a sufficient audiovisual experience for most people, but we're adding extra things into the point where we're having full meals. Like, a meal is an aesthetic experience on its own. So we're just combining. How many more things can we combine? We'll have lasers coming off. We'll have our seats rumbling. We'll have smell-o-vision. We'll be eating a full meal. Watching it in 3D. 3D was an example. So 3D became a big thing, 15 years ago, because we needed to charge more money. And so that was a really easy thing to add. Is like, we'll just do some 3D formatting. We'll do 3D movies. And then that's kind of a hyper visual experience that you really can't get at home. You have to deliver something that people are not going to get at home, and 3D was that answer. I think it even goes even further back than what we're really thinking of, because the era of the big flat screen TV is right now, but and it's been here for like 10 years. I had a projector back in the 2000s, but we had big screen TVs in the 90s, those rear projection behemoths that people were like, I can have a good movie going experience right here at home. I remember my dad bought one for Christmas like in 1993 or something, and it was really cool. We'd never seen a TV that big. That was a crazy Christmas gift. And we'd watch our VHSs on the big screen TV, and we're like, it's like we're at the theater. Not really, but it was really cool to be able to see more of the movies. Movie theaters back in the 80s, guys, were really crappy. They basically were flat. I never saw a theater where you could see the screen as a kid until like I was in high school, when I was probably big enough to like actually see the screen. So as a kid, what would happen is my parents would file me in, and they'd always want to sit in the back for whatever reason, because they wore glasses, and like, I don't know, everyone wanted to sit in the back of the theater so that the screen was little. I don't know why everyone I knew wanted to do this. But we'd sit in the back. Someone would sit in front of you. I could, you'd see like half the screen. It'd be like watching this, and there'd be a hat, and there'd be some lady's hair, and you'd be like kind of looking around to try to see what was on the screen, because everything was on a flat floor. They were permanent seats bolted down. But if you imagine like the folding chairs in the multi-purpose room at your school with like a projector there, that's what movie theaters were like in the 80s. And only either really old theaters had stadium seating where like the seats went up so that everybody could see the screen. And I remember they opened a theater with stadium seating in the 90s, kind of where I lived in Bakersfield, like right as I was moving out of Bakersfield. And those seats, it was like when you went to it, you're like, oh my gosh, I can just see the screen. I can just like see the screen. And then they built one when I lived in Fresno. They had one. It was the Edwards. It's still there, I think. But like they put an IMAX in. Like it was really cool to finally be able to like see the screen. Why did they do that? Well, I think maybe, they were trying to make the cinema experience as good as possible for people. They were trying to make the theater experience as good as possible. But when you think about how good movies were in the 80s, it's like they didn't even need to do that. It's like movies were so good, people would sit on a flat floor, or like it would be like maybe barely pitched up. They'd sit on what's essentially a flat floor and look around people's hair in order to watch movies. That's how good movies were. So my thesis here is that people aren't going to the theaters because they just don't see the value in it, and they don't see the value in it because the movies are not good. If movies were consistently as good as even like the big Marvel stuff from like 5 or 6 years ago, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. Now, keep in mind, somehow theaters have survived the pandemic. We used to joke that Sonic the Hedgehog was going to be the last blockbuster, because after the pandemic, people were never going to go back to the theaters. They did, but habituation makes a difference. So I think the fact is, if the movies were really good, more people will be more interested in seeing movies. Like just going out to the movies on a Friday night and seeing what's there, and going and watching and feeling pretty confident that you were going to see a movie that was going to be worth your time to watch at the very least, versus Netflix, where it's like, it's worthless. It's maybe barely worth the time to watch, which could be spent other ways. Anyway, leave me your thoughts down below. This video has gone on long enough. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my Substack down below and join my Patreon. Support me as I continue to make new and interesting art and some other areas. So have a great one, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.